nothing to do with this topic, but it has something to do with the comment you just said about death.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Primas podcast. I am Cindy. And that's my prima Jess.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in again. We appreciate it.
We do appreciate it. So today we have a very psychology topic. Wouldn't you say, Prima?
Correct. Yes.
And Jessica was very passionate about this topic, and it had me getting flashbacks from when I was in college studying. And I'm like, stick. But
PTSD.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about cognitive distortions. Yay!
Bravo. Cue in the applaud, Eloy. Thank you. Super or do the burp, 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 burp. We used to do it. Remember all the time?
Cognitive store. Brought to you by the Primas. Okay. This is a good one.
Yeah. So this is a good topic. And I was very passionate about it because like I was telling Cindy about a couple of weeks ago, this was actually brought up during one of my therapy sessions. And like, typically my therapy, I meet my therapist once a week. I usually have something that like happened or I want to discuss that has been weighing on my mind, right? So I want to talk about it and like deal with it and heal and move on from it. But there are other times in my therapy session where I'm not really going through the storm. So then I think my therapist has like these fillers of articles or discussions that she'll just like, okay, well, let's discuss this and like pick my brain on it. So she actually like brought up this topic to me and this article, which we're going to share somehow. I don't know how, because it's a PDF file, but we will share about cognitive distortions. And we deconstructed that article in this therapy session. And it just gave me an idea. Like Cindy and I love to discuss like behaviors and the emotions aspect, but we rarely touch, excuse me, Prima, we rarely touch on the thought process. And I feel like we all have like automatic responses, which lead to like the behavioral and emotion part, which we usually like discuss in this podcast. So I just wanted to touch on like the mind, body, and soul. And so this week we're diving into like the mind aspect. Or as like my therapist likes to say, like, let's delve into that, Jess.
And you quote.
End quote. Mm-hmm.
So when Jess sent me this PDF file, I thought to myself, I just can't, I don't get it. And I read it so many times and I was like, I don't. But once I got, I looked more into it and I started to get different examples because we're all such different learners. Mm-hmm. I struggled a lot in traditional education where I'm like, I would look around and be like, everyone gets this. And my mind would wander. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? But I just realized, the type of learning, I can learn it, but, it's different than how it was presented.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So my first thought was like, okay, well, what does cognitive distortions even mean? Because that's very like a textbook term. And so I asked Jess to give us some examples, and she is so graciously going to share like because there's 10 of them. So there's 10 cognitive distortions. So we'll talk about like, what does that even mean? And then we'll go over as many as we can. I think we can go over all 10, but yeah, Jess is going to she's going to give us some examples. And so am I. I actually watched a YouTube video with this like lady explaining these things. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I have felt all of those types of ways. Mm-hmm. And so it's basically like a negative pattern of thinking, right? Like it's when we're in a bad mood or when we're stressed or whatever, like if we like snap, whatever we thought of when we snapped, that is a cognitive distortion, right?
Yeah. So if you want, I can like give you the example, I mean, the definition before like we go into it. So like the definition I actually had like gotten was from Psychology Today's website. So the technical textbook term is definition, I'm sorry, is cognitive distortions are habitual ways of thinking that are often inaccurate or negatively biased. So that's the straight up simple definition. So when I thought of it, it took me back to when we read that book by Deepak Chopra, The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. And in one of the first chapters that he broke it down to was the behavior and emotions are responses of our thought process. So these things happen so automatic that we associate them with the response, right? With the reaction of our act, like of a physical behavioral aspect or emotional one. But like, it's really hard to catch the thought process of like, why do we think the way we do? So cognitive meaning just simply thinking. So when I refer to the term cognitive, it's just our way of thinking. And distortion is a misleading or false impression. And a synonym for distortion was misrepresented. So like a blurry, not a clear image of what we're portraying is what cognitive distortions is. So yeah, Prima, so going back to that comment, it can be interpreted as a negative way of thinking, correct? Which are the 10 examples we're going to go over today.
Okay, cool. So I saw this video that said it was really cool because it gave me a visual of what it means. So another way of looking at it is like putting glasses on, but there's a blurred vision. And so our thoughts are exaggerated or distorted. And they happen so quickly, like you said, that we believe them, even though they may not be true, because it's negative thinking. So if we're stressed out, a lot of these came up for me, especially when I'm PMSing. And I've tried, and I am very active about like changing my diet and being like super getting on top of that, because I don't like how much my mood changes. And that's when I think I've displayed cognitive distortions where, okay, should we start?
Yeah, let's start with the first one.
Okay, the first one is all or nothing thinking, meaning that you look at things in absolute black and white categories. So it's like an all or nothing.
Correct. And another term I found for this was polarized thinking. So 2 ends. So like think of a spectrum. So like either you think white, like this extremity, or black, this extremity. There is no in between. It's either one or the other.
Yeah. So what are real life examples of this thinking? The one, you have one?
No, you go first.
One that came up when I saw this video was whenever I failed at something in life, I would associate that to the rest of who I was. So I would say like, especially like what I was just talking about school and like textbook and stuff. So like I was never a straight A student or even B student. I was like the always barely passing student. And I just remember thinking like I suck at everything. And that was my self-esteem was really, really low. I didn't think I was ever smart, you know? And so I was just like, I'm a failure, that's it. And then I applied that thinking to everything else. And it like put me in horrible positions.
Interesting. I came up with a very similar example. So my definition, if I had to put it in words, would be this kind of distortion is unrealistic and unhelpful because most of the time reality exists in between the black and white. It's not on 2 ends, you know? It falls in the gray matter, which is part of a solutions, but I do want to start using these like technical terms. One example I came up with was similar like you, Prima, was I'm dumb. And like a rational way of thinking, and undoing that way of thinking is saying, well, I'm struggling to comprehend the material in class, but I'm motivated to learn. So you don't have to think like that, like, oh, I'm dumb and I'm not getting the material. The fact that you're in the class and like you never gave up is part of your success, And yeah, we weren't given the tools early on, and we went to LAUSD, which isn't like the most credited district. So I think it's like reframing that thought,
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense a little bit?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And mine was like, I always ask a million questions. And before, like, people would always be like, well, why do you ask those questions? Why do you ask? And I'm like, because I don't understand it. Like, I'm not just going to let these people explain something to me and I'm unclear or assuming, right, that it's going to be black or white ways. Like, no, there is room for like the gray and clarification. So ask questions would be like ways to undo that thinking.
Okay. So number 2 is overgeneralization, meaning that you view a negative event as never-ending pattern of defeat. For that one, again, like when I was a lot younger, but I would overgeneralize a lot of things. You can, anything I would be scared of. Like, I remember living in California, and then like this movie came out. It was like one of the San Francisco and the fall to actually like, the big earthquake everyone talks about, but the movie was it like 2020? It was a year.
Did Dwayne Johnson come out in that one?
Yes.
Oh yeah, it's a very exaggerated movie. I know what you're talking about. San Andreas.
It's super, but yeah, I don't know, one of those. But I was just like, oh my God, like we live here. It made total sense for me. And then I just kept thinking, anywhere you move, there's going to be natural disasters. And this really horrible negative thought process from being afraid of earthquakes. That's like a basic example, but yeah, I think that's one that we do a lot, like we have a negative event and then we're like, oh, this is how it is when we come here.
It applies across the board. Like, yeah, like you said, like there's going to be, there's not earthquakes in Denver, but there's blizzards. And you even told me last time you get tornado warnings. I was like, what? And then the whole time I was there, I was thinking, wow, there's going to be a tornado any day now, My example was actually, so like when we overgeneralize, we reach a conclusion about one event and incorrectly apply it across the board. So mine was like high school. I had a terrible Spanish teacher my first year in high school, and I hated her. Like, she traumatized me. And, for those of you that know, I don't speak Spanish, and she would make me read Spanish word, like a Spanish book in front of the class, in front of everyone. And I'm like, I don't speak Spanish. So then on, I would always ditch her class. Like, I think I only showed up twice or like a week. And then after that, I was like, nah, like F this teacher. Like, that's so brutal and traumatizing. Like, I wasn't in Spanish 1 for like native speakers. I wasn't, so that rational thinking, unrational thinking, I applied it across the board, like thinking, no, like all Spanish teachers suck. Like, I'm never going to speak Spanish. But like a rational way of thinking, it's me telling myself like that's not true, because after that I did get a great Spanish teacher, and shout out to Miss Johnson at Franklin, who made me like love Spanish and want to learn more about it, because that previous experience I had was like so traumatizing and fearful, like I was a kid, like in 9th grade. But that's another example. It's like overgeneralizing it, like all Spanish teachers suck. But then you find a rational alternative way of thinking, which is like, no, well, that was just one bad teacher in that school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, good example. Number 3, how are we doing on time? We're barely on number 3. Mm-hmm. Mental filter means you dwell on the negatives and ignore the positives. Mm-hmm. So this one happens to me a lot when I'm PMSing. It sucks because I know that it doesn't feel good. Our feelings and our thoughts correlate, they communicate. And if That's another thing, you know, when you're self-aware, you can say, this doesn't feel good. And when something doesn't feel good, you can fix it. You got to be brave and say, well, I'm going to confront it. I'm going to confront the uncomfortable emotion of however it is that I need to fix this. So I try to stay away from people during that time. And I try to, because it's really hard to get out of like the snappy mood. You know, and like I take deep breaths and I do the best that I can. Like when I go out into nature, that helps a lot, but I can't always go out into nature. So yeah, so I think that's one that I'm like, for a few hours, I'll allow myself to be negative, and then I'm like, I don't allow myself to stay there for too long. But yeah, mental filter.
This is a good one. Mental filter is like fearing the worst in many situations, and we all see ourselves doing it, but to me, I used to be really bad at paying my credit, like my bills. You know, I inherited like learning that habit, and it carried on to me in my early youth. So I remember when I was trying to like fix my credit, I remember thinking like, when I get the bill, I have to pay it, and pay it then, even though it wasn't due. Like I would pay my things like 2 weeks in advance, because it would give me anxiety not paying it on time. But then I had to let that go and learn that like, okay, well, there's payment arrangements. Like Mariela showed us, we can dig into our emergency funds. The worst isn't going to happen by me not paying my bills, but living with that fear of anxiety, like it's not going to get paid on time, you know, because I had done that and I did it, like it ruins my credit horribly. And even times I would be late on my car payments. And I'm like, okay, like back then I'd be like, I don't care, repo my car, you know? And then after I'm just like, no, they can't repo my car. Or if I don't make my payment on time, that's like a possibility. And it's just like knowing things that are out of our control that are going to happen, but being okay with it, right? Like not allowing that fear to like control us is like what I got from this one. Like not dwelling on that negative.
Yeah, like focusing on the negatives. What did I write? Oh, and then one thing that sometimes I used to struggle with would be like when I became a mom, when my daughter wasn't with me, and it's around that time of the month. Oh man, it's. I mean, I start thinking about the worst case situations, and so this
That's
is
a good
another.
example.
This is a super exaggerated example because again, it's not really me, and I know it's not, but I can't shake it. Where I'm like, and I get extremely like paranoid and obsessed, right? Like I start obsessing. So when you start thinking of something that's very negative and you're thinking about it constantly and nothing you do can shake it, then you know when it happens a lot, which is super crazy, is at night. During that time. And I'll tell my mom and she's like, oh, that used to happen to me too. Isn't that crazy? Like at night we get the most fearful, like as moms. And I'm like, why? And then we start creating these scenarios.
Yeah.
And they're so bad. And it's just like, that's not even, it's just psycho shit. And they're like, no.
Dude, I would do that too. And it gets so bad where I'll make myself cry.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like, why is it that it's not that serious? And that's a great example, Prima. Like neither of us thought of that. I thought of like my
I was just like, that happens often. I'm getting better. But like I said, if I think like this during the day, it's easy for me to go for a walk, go hiking, go work out. Where at night it's just you and your thoughts, man.
Yeah, so that's a good one. And we're gonna have solutions, guys. Don't think we're just gonna leave you hanging with these negative thoughts. So.
I don't know the solution, bro. No, I'm just saying. We're all gonna die. That's definitely my PMS tagging. Isn't that crazy though? Like a lot of these things came up for me. It's like, well, and it's like, Cindy, okay, so 2 months or 2 weeks, 3 weeks out of the month, I'm this person. And then 1 week and it's so crazy because I'm like, I'm not even like this. I'm under the influence of my hormones. Like I'm a nice, kind person. But then I have a super dark side.
Your shadow side. Have you named your shadow side?
Let's not. Whoa. It's really close.
My shadow name is Jessica. Remember, you guys?
Jessica?
Yeah.
Oh, I remember Jessica.
She's a very bad person. She hasn't been out for a while.
Whew. All right. Man, we have problems.
I know, dude. This is why we're always talking about solutions and different theories. That's a good point, Primo, because
No,
we
this
don't have
would
it
be
resolved. Yeah.
like so Jess is doing therapy, and when she told me about this, it was like therapy for me, because I'm like, it went into some places, which is really good, so it's like I'm benefiting a little bit from your therapy, because I was just like, Jessica's like, which one do you most identify with? Because I identify with this one, and I was like, you identify with one? Because I do like all across the board. And I was like, whoa, I need some therapy. So, and it's okay though, right? Because you can fix it. Like, see, and there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, no, I'm very aware that I do that and I don't like it. But obviously therapy would help, right? Or me really like looking into more solutions, because I hate using that as justification. Like,
correct. That's the point of this. It's just to help these unhelpful thoughts. That's all, and just to be aware of them. It's not saying that we don't do it and we're perfect and we no longer think like this. We very much think like this still to this day, but we're just trying to get more aware of them and understand who we are and why we think like this. Because like I said in the beginning, they're so automatic, these responses. It's just like, we don't think when I say pull out your phone, Prima, you don't think like, okay, let me tell my right hand to go into my pocket, pull out my phone, and here you go. Like, it's not like that, it's so automatic that it happens within like milliseconds, these thought process.
yeah.
So that's what's interesting, because it's so easy for us to catch the reactive part, which is the physical behavior or like our emotions, but to catch our mind, thinking like this, and to stop it and to undo that thought process is very difficult and challenging. So yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. So number 4 is discounting the positives, which means you insist that your accomplishments or positive qualities don't count. Don't look at this side of my hair, guys. I just went like this real quick and I'm like, oh. Jessica pointed out, she was just like, no, it's beautiful.
Me too.
Like, okay. So discounting the positives, I think women, we get a bad rep for this, like we're just constantly, not just women, but like we have such low self-esteem in general when we're younger. I think that's changing a lot, with the younger generations, I hope. But like, I mean, I still kind of struggle with this sometimes, where I'm just like, oh, that's nothing. And people are like, no, that's amazing. Or, and I'm just like, it's whatever. So, yeah, that's one that I think a lot of people might do.
Yeah. Having this mindset, as we read in the article, what highlighted to me was having this kind of mindset takes a lot of joy out of life. And then when I was thinking of my personal example, it came up with my bachelor's. I remember when I was going through that, even though it was one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my life, I would always downplay it. I'd always be like, well, everyone has a bachelor's right now, or, oh, it's so easy because, that's like the stepping stone to get to like a master's or doctorate program. And I was always downplaying it. And so I'm still learning to reframe it, even though I graduated 2 years ago. I want to reframe it to like a positive way. It's like, no, like I worked my butt off for that, and I always joke around by saying like tears and blood went into that degree, but it's so true. It took a lot of like determination, and it's mine. Yeah. And I didn't have the easiest journey, we've talked about that also. And I hate that I always downplay it, because it was it really changed who I was in so many ways. And I never thought I would able to attain that degree.
Yeah.
That was a hard one for me.
So don't downplay things. And when someone gives you a compliment, because we do that too, where we're like, oh no, God, we're so quick to do that. Like, your hair looks cute. And I'm like, no, well, that's because, and you start explaining why your hair looks cute instead of saying like, thank you. Just taking it. So yeah, don't downplay your achievements, because they're not easy, right? Like, a lot of things that we do in life, they're not easy. Even if other people might make it seem like it's easy, it's not. Any accomplishment is an accomplishment. So don't downplay that. Number 5, jumping to conclusions. I think this is a popular one. Mind reading, you assume that people are reacting negatively to you when there's no definite evidence. And it's kind of like fortune telling. You arbitrarily predict things will turn out badly.
Yeah, I'm still guilty of this one. I'm
Yeah.
trying to get better. My example is like jumping mind reading or jumping to conclusions when like my boyfriend or family member is like giving me a quote unquote silent treatment. And I automatically jump to the conclusion, like, did I do something wrong? Are you mad at me? And I keep asking them, like, what's wrong? Like, why are you so quiet? Or, you know, this and that. And then they get annoyed with me. And then I'm like, okay, well, why are you getting defensive? And then the whole cycle starts into something that was nothing. And then I'm like, maybe then I have to like distinguish empathy, you know, like I'm trying to learn empathy. Like, okay, well, if I didn't jump to conclusion or mind reading, me justifying that or reframing is like, well, maybe my family member or boyfriend was tired or just simply didn't want to talk, because I get like that, you know? But like, dude, that's the toxic in me still that just jumps to that. Like, well, what's wrong? Like, I need to know what's wrong at that moment. And there's nothing wrong. That's what I thought of.
Yeah, for me, it actually came to me and I didn't think it was a problem. Of course, I kind of did in the depths, but it made me realize, because the YouTube video I saw gave this example, when you assume someone doesn't like you. So it's similar to yours, but I've always done it with like coworkers, like maybe like a supervisor or a director. I don't know, somewhere where I'm just like, I don't think they like me. And that's what I found in myself when I read this, where it's just like, because I would always think, I would tell my brother, like, you know, I vent to him a lot about work, my brother Robert, and he's just like, do you notice any patterns? Do you notice any patterns? Because you can't. And then so I was there, right? I was there where I'm like, yeah, I said that about my last supervisor. Like, what's the why? This is a you problem, not a them. It always is. It always is us, right? And so yeah, this one stuck out where it's just like, no, that's just an issue that's just kind of like a conditioning that you have that you need to work on to decondition. Because you, again, this thing, it's like it's so automatic and we're so used to thinking this way that we start to believe that it's true, even though it's a distorted reality. That it might be true, but you, at this point in my life, I need positive outcomes, positive relationships. I need to, you know what I mean? Like when you're younger or more immature, you think, oh, you victimize yourself. Like, well, that person doesn't like me because of this or that person. And it's just like, regardless of whether they like you or not, you need to behave in such a way to, it doesn't matter how anyone else is acting or not. You should act this way, period. Right. And so now I'm there. Now I have a lot more maturity but I loved seeing it. Like I needed to see that. So that was cool.
That's a good one, Prima. Dang. And I've heard you talk about it too, and I never made that connection. That was a good one. Damn, Robert's going to be so proud of you.
I know. He's going to see, what did I say?
I know. I was just thinking that he's going to feel like, I've been telling you that the whole time. It's like, okay, Robert, we don't have a.
But you know, like with everything, you know, it's not, people get it when they're going to get it.
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
no timing, you know, like either you get it or you don't, because it's like, why didn't I get it with him? And sometimes but I'm on the road, right? To like, how can I learn myself more to catch these thoughts that are limiting so that I get better at that? So I don't mind it. Like, I love the growth. I love feeling uncomfortable. I like when life hits me with the bam, bitch, now you got to be humble because this, like, bring it, you know, because it gets better when you understand yourself more. You start being more patient with yourself and others, right? Because you're like, well, if I did this, that's how a lot of people are thinking. And it just helps you, right? Like identify that.
I was just going to say that. You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, you identify, if you don't even relate to this one, like mind reading or jumping to conclusion, might not necessarily you identify with it, but you can identify now in others. And that's giving you the empathy and understanding to be like, okay, I see why this person's acting like that. And it's not your job to call them out on it, but to accept when it's their time to, like, you know, be open to it. Like your brother's been saying it the whole time. And I'm sure, Robert, I know we were joking about it, but he's just going to be happy that you finally came to that conclusion, you know, at your own time, not like when he was forcing you, or not forcing you, but like telling you.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's our own journey. You know, we're all on our own path.
You are your own rainbow.
Well said, Prima. right?
Yeah, that one, I feel like a lot of people do that one. And the cool part is, like you were saying, when you understand it in others, well, for me, when I understand something in myself, then I understand it in others. And I'm like, it's a good way to not take things personally, like when someone is coming at you, because people are going to come at you, you can understand it's not personal. And we know that, but even these little nuances, it's like, no, really, it's not personal. It's just not, like, right? It's just us acting out our childhood conditioning. We learned this, through our childhood environment. It's yeah. Okay. Ooh, where are we? Oh, okay. Number 6, magnification or minimization. You blow things way out of proportion, or you shrink their importance inappropriately. So I've definitely done the magnification.
Ooh, I was going to say I'm related more to the minimize.
Yeah. So that's just, when something happens and you want something to go right and it doesn't, you get in a bad mood and you throw this adult tantrum. And where it's just like you're blowing out you need to chill, and I think now I know how to chill automatically. I'm always like, just go with the flow, or I try to be, where before, like if I had a negative event, when you let something ruin your day.
Correct.
It's just like, that's crazy, never again. But I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah. Mine is the minimizing, that I wouldn't bring things up or like bring things forth to talk about it. I think I would hold it in a lot and be like, oh, it's not that serious. It's not that serious. And then it builds up within me. And then I've seen it explode within myself because I wouldn't talk about it. I just always say, like, it's not important. It's not important. But like me talking to someone and processing it and validating my thoughts and my emotions and all that is a way of like me being in the middle about it and not minimizing how I feel.
I'm glad we had both examples. Number 7, emotional reasoning, meaning that you reason from how you feel. I feel like an idiot, so I really must be one. Or I don't feel like doing this, so I'll pull it off.
Emotional reasoning. This one, I thought I understood it, but I kind of still didn't. I really don't make myself feel like this. I feel terrified every time. Yeah, like the example they gave in the article, it says, I feel terrified about going on airplanes, so it must be very dangerous. Like, I don't let my emotions dictate my behavior, if that makes sense.
That's
or at least
like,
I don't think I do. I don't know. Maybe I'm not catching it or seeing it like you.
I think it feels like that one might be similar to overgeneralizing. That's the airplane example where it's just like, well, I have a fear of planes. Planes must be dangerous. Where it's like you're overgeneralizing, right? A little bit. So, or like I had this, someone called me an idiot, so therefore I'm an idiot, right? That's the other example.
Yeah. This one was like,
let us know if you guys know.
Because me and Cindy were kind of like stump on this one. I used to think I thought it was it, but when my therapist explained it to me, she was like, no, that's not what it is. So I was even like not thinking it correctly. So I can't even give you an example.
Okay. So yeah, you guys help us out with this one. Emotional reasoning. So number 8, should statements, meaning that you criticize yourself or other people with shoulds or shouldn'ts, musts, oughts, have tos, are similar offenders.
Yeah, this one stood out the most to me. Like when I was telling Cindy, like, which one stood out to you? Number 8 was like smacking me in the face, like stood out to me. I think for me, I do it a lot to myself where I tell myself I should be here in my life. I should have this in my life, or I should be doing this or that in this. And there is no such thing as a time frame. I'm putting this time frame and putting myself in this box of shoulds that is only stressing me out and giving me anxiety, when in reality, it's not productive or helpful for me to think like that. So in a way that I've been challenging myself for quite some time now is removing these terms that you just said, Prima, the shoulds, the musts, the oughts, the haves to from my vocabulary. It's like one of the easiest ways I can give an example is I shouldn't have a house by the age of 32, like I'm working towards that. That is a goal of mine, but because I haven't necessarily accomplished it by my quote unquote 30s, doesn't mean like I failed at it.
Yeah. That one reminds me a lot of comparison, like when we compare ourselves to like others and we're like, well, we're not there. What does that mean about us? Right. And it creates a lot of insecurities. And I think social media does that a lot as well, right? Because our social media behavior is to post pictures of the things that are highlights. There's nothing wrong with that. But then we start to believe, oh, this is someone's life all the time. They're always doing great. And it's like, well, we're human, there's a lot where we're all going through other stuff too, but yeah.
Yeah. So this is a challenging one for me. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Number 9, labeling. You identify with your shortcomings. Instead of saying, I made a mistake, you'll tell yourself, I'm a jerk, I'm a fool, or I'm a loser.
Yeah. And I just think labeling labeling overall is very, demeaning almost, like we have so many labels as it is, and adding more and trying to fit in this mold of those labels, like just because we're females, now we should, but because we're females, we're this and that type of personality. I'm a mom and I'm this and that, when we don't fit the mold. You and I are both female and mothers and are completely differently definitions of what those should be, and not neither one is right or wrong. But I think the more labels we put on ourselves, the more we feel that pressure that we have to fit that like somewhat societal norm or like mold.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. And I think talking negatively, like to yourself, negative thinking, or sometimes we're harsh on ourselves, and we need to be more compassionate with ourselves because we're going to make mistakes, and we just have to accept ourselves unconditionally. Mm-hmm. Because labeling, or, like when someone says something like I'm ugly or I'm stupid, it's like, mm-hmm. no one, no one is that. We're like great, but our perceptions when we compare ourselves to others, or when we're just kind of like in a gloomy mood, we're just kind of like focusing on the negatives, and it's not healthy. And yeah, it reminds me of like when someone's a little depressed, mm-hmm. they're very like, they look at themselves negatively and the world negatively, and it's a blurred vision. It's not the reality. It's your perception, but it's not, you can just change your thinking. And it's not, you can just change your thinking. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of work, but I like to know that I can work on the things that I'm not good at, or, if I have things that I have to work on and get better, I want to do that. I want to feel better. I want to treat others better, or, like the ripple effect when you work on yourself is really, really powerful. So there are ways to address these things. Okay, 10, last one. Yeah, it was last one, right? Yeah, okay.
Correct.
Personalization and blame. You blame yourself for something you weren't entirely responsible for, or you blame other people and overlook ways that your own attitudes and behaviors might contribute to a problem.
Yeah, this was a good one. And I feel like the example given on the article was like the best, which is when I quote, when a mom received a note that her child was having difficulties at school, she told herself, this shows what a bad mother I am.
That is a great example.
Because yeah, that's not in our control. Our kids are, their own beings, and their failures are not necessarily our failures. We just have to be there for support, to support them in all aspects. But I feel like that one hit home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like you're judging yourself too harshly, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you have to realize that we're all doing the best that we can. even when someone isn't doing what we think isn't their best, or like, well, I would do better in that situation, or pull yourself out of there or whatever, people are still really doing their best. Because if you had the tools to be more self-aware, work on yourself, right? Like you have this more clarity and peace at mind, you wouldn't be feeling, I don't think anybody wants to feel miserable and down on themselves. You know, it feels better when you feel, I was going to say it feels better when you feel better, but it feels better when you're thinking positively.
Exactly.
So,
and then the opposite of that, I like the example also, because that's us blaming ourselves, you know, like looking inward too much and then looking outward. I think I've seen people do this a lot where they blame others or people for their circumstances for their problems. So the example the article gave was, the reason my marriage is so lousy is because my spouse is totally unreasonable. And that's also not good, you know, like not blaming yourself, but like taking accountability and coming up with a solution.
that reminds me of when someone's like constantly in a victimization type state of mind, where it's just like, it's never my fault, it's always everyone else's fault, or like the accountability piece. Like some people really don't know what that means. Like they really feel like the world is against them, and so any negative thing that does happen, it's like, that wasn't me, that was them. Instead of like
analyzing
through that
and analyzing like your contribution to like, well, what's making it lousy, or like what's making it shitty, or you know what I mean, in this situation, because you do have a contributing factor, and the fact that you're oblivious to like your own and just like looking outward doesn't help the situation.
Yeah, it doesn't help, and it causes a lot of friction, right, with people around you. Because if I've met people this way, and I mean, I guess the foundation of that is that they don't know how to trust. And so they've built this extra layer of protection where it's not me, it's them, right? I feel like that's where it might come from, where it's like, I didn't do anything wrong. And these are conditionings that happen from childhood. So we've been practicing this for how many years? And so it's not easy, but I do love that everything, like all the videos that I saw, it said like, you can change this. Yes, therapy helps so much, but you can also look into this information yourself. Like I'm not going to therapy, and this really helped me personally, like to look, it kind of helps you look deeper into your thoughts. Like, oh, I didn't realize that that was a thing that I did. Now I do, it was obvious, but sometimes you kind of just need that connection, right? Like, oh, you saw this person say it, or this other person explained it a certain way. So yeah, you can control your thoughts.
So it's like a closing statement. I know we really didn't like emphasize on the solutions, but I do want to some shape, way, or form attach this whole article, because it does give like solutions and different methods of you how to undo this way of thinking. But if I can like end with any like closing thoughts, it'd be like, challenge yourself. You know, it's going to be very tough to catch this thought process, and it's not easy. I'm paying a licensed professional to help me with mine. And the whole purpose of this topic for me that I thought was like interesting and wanted to talk on the podcast was to provide helpful ways to look at the world in like a clearer, more rational lens. So it's so funny how you talked about glasses in the beginning, because I ended. It's like, I don't know how we do it, but we do it.
You're the same person. My part of the solutions was to pay attention to how you feel, because a lot of the time our bodies are or it's just kind of like, oh, I don't feel good, and I feel unmotivated, and like tap into that. And then I guess the opposite of when you're thinking negatively is try to think of the positive things that are happening in your life. One example is that like my daughter will say, oh, I wish I had that, whatever. And then I tell her, do you need that? Because I try to explain, like, you need to be thankful for the things that you have, because kids, you know, they're so easy to get a new toy and then they leave it. And I said, you know, there's kids that don't have toys. You have a lot of toys, or you have a roof over your head. We work with a demographic that doesn't, you know, that's really, is struggling. And so there's a lot of things that we have to be thankful for when we are complaining. So when I start to complain and get like negative, one thing that I read was like, write down all of the things you're thankful for. Even if you don't feel thankful, the more you write, it kind of like forces you into a positive state of mind, because you start seeing like, it minimizes that negativity. It's like, this is one little thing. And is it even real, or is it a blurred vision? Is this under the influence of your hormones? You know, there's a lot to think about.
Yeah, well said.
Yay. And just the other thing is like, realize that you can change. I kind of like that, you know, because there's hope. It doesn't mean like, well, this person's this way and like, that's it. They're stuck in their ways. A lot of people will be stuck in their ways, but you never know. You know, I think we got to give the benefit to anybody in the world to say like, no, you can achieve, looking deeper and reading more about yourself, getting to learn who you are better, and question your childhood. I think that's what's really helped me. But yeah.
Hope you guys liked
sponsored
it.
by Chapstick. Just kidding. Okay, everybody.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate it.
Don't judge my hair, you guys. I'm still learning like how to do it. But if you have any tips, let me know, because I'm desperate. Thanks for listening. Cognitive Distortions.